Welcome to the Football Garbage Time NFL podcast. My name is Wong, and I'm the editor-in-chief of Football Garbage Time. And with me is the godfather of Football Garbage Time. It's Scott King. Hey, Scott, how you doing?
I'm doing well. We're right in the middle of preseason football, and I think we have college football in like 8 days.
I know,
So
isn't that
can't,
insane?
can't complain.
It really kind of snuck up on me. I've been wishing for it for so long, and now it's right here in my backyard, and I don't know what to do with myself. It's just insane. And speaking of things that snuck up on me, I'm sure you're aware of the fact that Taylor Swift appeared on Travis Kelce and Jason Kelce's podcast, New Heights, just yesterday. And I thought relevant to you, she did give a shout out to Jared Goff of the Detroit Lions. She said, and this is great because I love the fact that they asked her, what did you know about football before starting to date Travis Kelce? And she said, quote, I thought it was like Jared Goff is here, Josh Allen's here, and they're going to they blow a whistle and they go at each other and they're like, grr, and it's like, who's going to win? It sounds like a celebrity fight, Jared Goff versus Josh Allen. Doesn't sound like football to me, but I think that's pretty cool. And they did ask Jared Goff about it. And he said exactly that. He said, it's very cool. A crazy couple of hours for him and his phone, because I'm sure they're blowing him up about it. But he was pretty excited about the fact that he got that kind of shout out from her. Of course, if Jared Goff and Josh Allen are on the same field, I guess one of them would be playing defense, which doesn't make any sense. But Jason Kelce did kind of take a note of that and said he'd love to see Jared Goff play some defense, which would be really, really interesting. But that being said, what do you think? I know, like we've said before, you're probably not a huge Taylor Swift fan. I don't see you as a Swiftie, but hey, shout out to your quarterback. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not the target demo, right? Like middle-aged, bald, gray bearded dude. I think it'd be a problem if I was a big Swiftie, maybe. But yeah, hey, look, I mean, she's the biggest name probably in the world. Does huge numbers, happy for her to, be involved in sports. And yeah, I mean, I think I saw a little bit, somebody might've said she was leaking the script for the Super Bowl. So
Right.
if it's the Lions and the Bills in the Super Bowl, that's not a bad thing. So
Yeah.
look, I probably couldn't name 3 songs, but I respect the celebrity of it. And I know last time I checked, the guys had done over 10 million views, and that was this morning. So they'll probably do, I don't even know, 30 million views on this podcast. So good for them. And yeah, I'll take anytime the Lions are mentioned in a positive way, I'll take it versus being in the toilet for the last.
Hey, I guess we know the secret sauce, right? We just have to get Taylor Swift to show up on our podcast, and we're going to get right through the roof. I mean, we're going to hit 10 mil in no time.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got a lot to discuss today. We're going to talk about some preseason week 1 takeaways, and then we're going to cover round 1 and 2 of our mock drafts. Let's get rolling here. All right, let's talk about that week 1 because it's in the books. Week 2 just around the corner, and there are some interesting performances that I think are standing out to certain people, and one of which is Shedeur Sanders. Obviously, all eyes on him. He started due to injuries to Kenny Pickett and Dylan Gabriel, and of course, Joe Flacco being held out as a presumptive starter for the Browns this year. He did basically what everyone thought he could do. He had 138 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. He also rushed 4 times for 19 yards. He had a QB rating of 106.8, completion percentage there of 60.9%. Not bad. Of course, it's preseason. And, what do you want to take away from this? I guess it's a big question. So what do you think here, Scott? I mean, is this something that we're going to hang our hat on and say, well, Shedeur is here? Or is this an indication he's going to do well in the regular season? Or do we just throw this aside and say, hey, it's preseason? What are we talking about?
Yeah, I think, anytime you're on the field and you're able to perform, no matter what the competition, these are NFL rostered players. Now, will they start in the league? Maybe not. Maybe they will. But, this is NFL competition. I saw somebody was talking about, I forget who it was. Maybe it was Orlovsky. Does he have poise in the pocket? Can he command the huddle? Does he have a feeling, what's going on? Are they getting a bunch of false starts? And he checked all the boxes, and I'll give him credit. I think, I've commented a lot on this, a lot on Twitter when it happened.
Right.
He did himself not, it was kind of an exercise in overconfidence in your, ability to influence an organization. And, I think he did well. He was given a chance, tons of eyeballs. I don't know that anybody has any more eyes on them in a preseason game, but moved the ball, was fast. Is he like, who are you starting? If you start him, what are you starting him over? Pickett? Like, we know who he is.
Yeah,
So if he ends up starting, or maybe it's Flacco and then him, see what you got, right? I mean, it's just they don't really have a great situation, and I think he was prepared. I don't think they had a single false start or delay of game. Those would be the things where it's just like the guy has no clue. He's way over his head,
right.
but he seemed to rise to the moment, and I'll give him full credit. Like, good for him.
Yeah, and I will also note though that Tyler Huntley, who was only basically signed a few days before that game, he also went 6 for 8 for 51 yards and a touchdown, with 6 rushes and 10 rushing yards, and didn't commit any errors there or penalties. Let's take this all with a grain of salt. Obviously, I'm happy for Shedeur Sanders. This is what he had to do to remain on the page. He's probably the most discussed rookie 5th round pick ever. So, I mean, this is one of those things where it totally makes sense but this is the bare minimum, right? I mean, like your first preseason game, don't make a mistake, be productive on the field. I mean, we saw Tyler Huntley is a veteran. He got in there with basically no time to prepare and did, I'd say, as well as Shedeur Sanders did. So obviously, I don't want to put a lot of stock in this. I want to put enough stock in that we can say, hey, he's still in the mix. But I think Joe Flacco still is your starter, and for a number of reasons, not only because he has the most experience in terms of starting there, but he's actually had success in Cleveland recently. And it gives your rookies some time to kind of marinate. And I think that's really going to be important because he only got to start because both Kenny Pickett and Dylan Gabriel are injured. So let's not put too much in the basket. And it did select Dylan Gabriel in the 3rd round. So there is some investment here. They can't just throw him away. I mean, I know he's basically as tall as a Smurf, but they picked him, and he's going to have to play some football, and we have yet to see what he can do on the field. This certainly does turn up the heat for Dylan Gabriel, though, to perform whenever he gets on the field in the preseason. So that's a big one. So let's turn to another rookie quarterback and another team with a very questionable quarterback room, and that's the New York Giants. And Jaxson Dart, who honestly, I'm on the Jaxson Dart bandwagon. I've been on the Jaxson Dart bandwagon. I don't think he's going to be – I'm not predicting he's going to be the next Patrick Mahomes, but I think he's going to be a reasonable NFL quarterback. That being said, he had his opportunity in the first week to kind of prove that, and he did complete 12 of 19 passes for 154 yards and a touchdown, and also ran 3 times for 24 yards, one really good scramble actually out of the pocket. When they talked to Brian Daboll afterwards, he said he was efficient, effective, aggressive, confident in the pocket. Some stuff that we can work on, but he's doing good. So clearly he was impressed, and that's obviously who you want to impress. But again, and I'm going to throw this reminder out there, just like I did with regard to Tyler Huntley in Cleveland. If you look at the other quarterbacks in the New York Giants ready room that night, Tommy DeVito also went 10 for 14 for 73 yards and a touchdown. Jameis Winston went 7 of 11 for 62 yards and 60 yards and a touchdown. Yeah, Jimmy Cutlets. Tommy Cutlets. So anyway, the fact is that all the quarterbacks in New York did well. So let's take that with a little grain of salt. But what do you think this says about Jaxson Dart and the New York Giants?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy for Dart. Coming out Ole Miss. I just totally blanked on the coach. But coming out of Ole Miss, you knew he was gonna be able to perform. And this is just a team. I don't know what the Giants are, right? So you've got Dart, you've got sort of this like cult hero and Tommy DeVito, you got Jameis Winston, and you got Russell Wilson. So here's two franchises with just like a room full of quarterbacks. And what's your separation, right? You've got a really, end of the line Russell Wilson. You've got Jameis Winston, who is like probably one of the most entertaining quarterbacks, not even on the field, but just in the league.
Actually, I'd say both, in and out,
yeah.
on and off the field, both. So,
right. And so, good for him. But what is this team? I don't like. I don't even know what they're going to be, how many games they're going to win. I think Dart's good, but who are they going to keep? Who are they going to cut? I think the Browns are going to trade some of these guys. There's no way, Kenny Pickett, Dylan Gabriel might get traded for all, for that matter. Are we going to see are we going to see Jameis traded? Like there's teams like the Saints who have 0 quarterbacks, and to see 2 teams with a bunch of them, happy for Jaxson Dart, but where's he going? Like I wouldn't want to start him out there in the Giants. I don't know what they have.
No.
Cleveland's got talent. Cleveland's a team.
Yeah.
I don't know what to even make of the Giants at this point to know where they're going. But yeah, Jaxson Dart looked good, but like, where's he going there? Just get his, he's going to get sacked 14 times a game. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure that the Giants are just going to start Russell Wilson because they don't care what happens to him. He was cheap and they don't care what happens to him. So they throw Russell Wilson out there to the Wolves. They get a chance to assess their offensive line and the rest of their pieces. If he's successful, great. If he's not successful, Jameis Winston's in there to just air it out and, 10 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. That's at least fun to watch. If nothing else, put a product on the field that's fun to watch. And I think right now their cornerstone of their offense has got to be Malik Neighbors. So it's one of those things where you got to find a quarterback that can get him the ball. And I don't know, it has to be far, right? I mean, he creates some space. He's not, you don't have to hit him 80 yards down the field. So there's a lot of things that can be done with just him and Russell Wilson, just him and Jameis Winston, just him and Tommy DeVito. So all those things being said, I mean, Jaxson Dart certainly has a higher ceiling than all those guys right now, in my opinion. And Tommy DeVito is what he is. I mean, he's a great backup quarterback. He's a great locker room guy. I can't imagine that the Giants get rid of him because of that reason, and he's really cheap. Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson, they're rentals. Any of those pieces can go at any time. And there's no reason to throw Dart into the Wolves immediately. So I don't think this does anything that changes what happens at the beginning of the season, but I could feasibly see, as you say, them jettisoning Winston and Russell, halfway through the season and saying, let's turn it to the next. Let's figure out what we got in Jaxson Dart, and DeVito will be his backup, and we'll just kind of run from there, see what happens. And if they create a conservative offense in which he can succeed, sort of like Jets did for Mark Sanchez way back in the day, where they didn't let him throw more than 10 yards down the field. With Malik Neighbors, that could be a positive thing, right? That could be a positive thing for them. So I think he did what he had to do to stay relevant. I'm not going to give him a ton here. Like I didn't give Shedeur Sanders a ton of credit for being awesome. I'm just going to say he did what he had to do in order to stay in the mix. So let's talk about the third thing that I have a takeaway from this weekend. And this is something we talked about last week. One of the worst defenses, and one of the things that I thought were the shakiest things going into the season, was the Bengals defense. They were horrible last year. They were basically created track meets for Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins week after week after week. And if they won games, it was like, 56-53. I mean, it was one of those things where they just had to keep airing it out and scoring. Great for fantasy, bad for real football fans of the Cincinnati Bengals. And the first preseason game of the year, and what do? They come out and they give 432 yards to the Eagles backups. They made Tanner McKee look like he belonged in the Pro Bowl. He completed 20 of 25 passes for 252 yards and 2 touchdowns. Listen, it was Bengals backups as we got later in the game, but the first quarter was basically all starters, right? I mean, that's not good. I mean, they started their offensive starters. They started their defensive starters. I mean, Joe Burrow and the Bengals offensive players played most of the snaps in the first quarter. And when you got to the end of the first quarter and then, kind of roll over to the ending of the Eagles drive that rolled into the first couple seconds of the second quarter, the Bengals are up 14-10 against the Eagles backups with Joe Burrow, hitting Jamar Chase for like 40-yard touchdowns. So this isn't a good thing. This is clearly not a good thing. The Eagles had 300 passing yards. They had 132 rushing yards. They put up 34 points in that Bengals defense. I mean, listen, I think Joe Burrow is great. Jamar Chase is amazing. T Higgins great, but can they last if they have to be out there on his track meet day in day out? I just don't think this is a sustainable model for the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, what do you think? I mean, am I wrong? Is the defense just not as bad as I think they are, or maybe they were just trying something new during a preseason game? I don't know. What do you think about the Bengals defense?
Yeah, it's so crazy when you see a team that's so one-sided, right? Like we've seen it in the past where the Ravens were that way back in the day where their
Yeah.
defense was like dominant and they couldn't move the ball. They had oh my gosh, they had these crazy quarterbacks. I'm losing everybody's name today, but it's Thursday. I'm ready for the weekend.
Right,
But
right.
they
Oh,
couldn't
and by
move.
the way, you were talking about Lane Kiffin before at Ole Miss,
Oh,
right? Is
Lane
that what you were
Kiffin. There
asking
you go.
about?
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I'm just gonna give you who I remember one question later. So it'll be totally out of context. If anybody gets to this point of the
Lane
podcast
Kiffin.
and be like, what the heck is he talking about? Why is he taking up Lane Kiffin? Well, everybody rewind 5 minutes and you'll know
5 minutes,
exactly why
you'll
I
get
said
that.
Lane Kiffin.
But yeah, these teams get so one-sided, and then it's like you can't shore this up. It's a huge problem. They're going to have the same issues. I mean, they got just steamrolled by, like
Yeah,
you said, the backups, and
yeah,
it's just shocking to see how poorly they perform. And they had the holdout situation, um, and they just have to get it together. But it's gonna be a problem the whole year, and you know we've seen it. And this is a team. I think we talked about it last week or the episode before. A few years ago, they're going to the Super Bowl, and it's going to be Burrow and Mahomes head to head for the next
yeah,
decade,
forever.
and they have just fallen off the map. And these franchises that just can't figure out one side of the ball, it's just shocking year over year, and free agencies and drafts, and they just can't address it. They're going to be in for a really long year again, and even if they win 10 games, not going anywhere. Like
Right.
you can win in the regular season, you can beat up teams,
Yeah.
score points. You get in the playoffs, it's
Totally different
still,
story.
even now, if you can't play defense and run the ball, you're not winning, right? Like you
Right.
got to be able to throw the ball, but you're not. I mean, they play outdoors. Like Burrow's not throwing for 400 yards in January in
No,
Cincinnati. It's just not going to
no.
happen.
It's just not. It's not a sustainable model for them. Now, part of the problem, Trey Hendrickson, the Stacks leader last year, holding out in Cleveland, in Cincinnati, did not play during the NFL preseason game one. That may make a difference, but I can't imagine one player is going to change the narrative on this really poor first
No.
quarter. I mean, that I just can't even imagine what's going to be like when Jalen Hurts gets in there. I mean, like Tanner
Yeah.
McKee was carving them up. I mean, that's just not a good thing. So more to come here. 2 more preseason games to go. Maybe the Bengals can learn something and put something together. Who knows? But lots of great things to keep an eye on for week 2 of the NFL preseason. So let's go ahead and move on now to the next topic. Let's talk about the draft, the mock draft for fantasy football that we did and are still doing now on X/Twitter. You can follow us at hashtag FGT mock draft. But if you haven't been following along, we have an article out on the website at footballgarbagetime.com where you can just read what the folks that are picking have chosen in terms of their players in the first 2 rounds of the draft. We have lots of great people involved with that mock draft right now, including Scott and I, as well as others from the Football Garbage Time site. And then we got Wole Akinzo from Urban Sports Scene. We got Commissioner Cooper from TSS Fantasy, Dave Earl from the Hog Sty, and George Templeton from All Burgundy and Gold Everything. So clearly you should just check it out because it's going to help you in your fantasy football season. But let's talk about those first 2 rounds right now. And I'm going to go through round 1 first and ask you, Scott, to tell me which one of these picks stand out to you as good or bad picks and why. So in round 1, here's who was picked. Number 1 overall was Bijan Robinson. And then number 2, we had Jamar Chase. Number 3, we had Saquon Barkley. Number 4, we had Justin Jefferson. Number 5, we had Jameer Gibson. 6, we had CD Lamb. At 7, we had Ashton Janty. And at 8, we had Jaden Daniel. At 9, Puka Nakua. And 10, Nico Collins. So interestingly, you got 5 wide receivers selected there in the first round, 4 running backs, 1 quarterback in the first round. What do you think here? What stands out to you, Scott?
Yeah, I think this went pretty much as you would expect. I think there was two things that stood out to me. One of them I think you're going to touch on. Um, One of them for me was your pick, actually, of Puka Nakua, right?
Ah,
So Stafford is dealing with this vertebrae or back, whatever his issue is. They've got a portable isolation chamber or something I saw in a news article out there for him to like sleep in between plays. So the question for him is like, where's Stafford? And
right.
without Stafford, they're going to roll out Stetson Bennett, who I think's like older than Stafford at this point. I think he's like a 42-year-old second year
Yeah.
player with all of his time. So I think you got to be careful there. And then I know your feelings on Ashton Genty, so I figure you'll probably go there. But those two stood out to me. Puka's totally relying on Stafford's health at this point.
Yeah, I think, so the interesting thing about Puka, and, I had to think about this long and hard because in the back end of the first round, you still have a lot of elite wide receivers left. And there are a number of wide receivers that went after him. Obviously, Nico Collins went after him. Amon-Ra St. Brown went after him. Then Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas. There was just a whole number of them that are out there. AJ Brown went after him. So I had to really think long and hard about this, and it was a tough choice. But I think that there is a significant amount of not only upside, but kind of proven on-field production from Puka Nakua when he's healthy, right? Because obviously 2 years ago, he had arguably one of the best rookie seasons of any wide
Yeah.
receiver in the NFL. He ended up being fourth best overall in terms of fantasy football, in terms of wide receivers. So that was out of nowhere. Second, this last year in
Pick up
2024.
of the year.
Yes, pick up a year, right? Exactly, and you had him in the you got him on waivers, which is basically a league-winning pickup right there. So and so very impactful, right? So last year, 2024, he only played 11 of 17 games due to his injuries, but he averaged 7.2 receptions, 9.6 targets, and 94.2 yards from scrimmage per game without any touchdowns. You're already at 17 fantasy points a game. I mean, the guy has a ginormous target share there, over almost 35% target share in games in which he played at least 50% of the snaps. So I do feel that without Matt Stafford, he's worse. But I don't see how the Rams can be successful without getting him the ball. Particularly now Cooper Kupp's out of there. So it's going to be him and Devontae Adams. I don't know what to make of Devontae Adams there. I do think he's gonna draw coverage, which is actually good for Puka Nakua. So I do think that there is an element of risk because of the fact that, as you say, Matt Stafford, and I have a vertebrae problem and it sucks. And, it's really hard to and I get it. So playing football with one has got to be way worse. Right. But that being said, he's a trooper. He's probably going to be able to get out there. Nakua is the guy he's going to go to on short yardage situations anyway. So they're probably going to have a little, a lot of 3-step and throw type of pass offense for Matt Stafford to keep him safe, to keep him from being on his back during the middle of the game. So I can see Nakua actually benefiting from that pretty dramatically. So that's why I like him at the back end of the first round. But it's a tough one, right? There is obviously a huge amount of unknown there. So Ashton Genty is interesting to me. Part of which is you don't know what you get out of a running back in their first round. I think we talked about this at early on, that we just don't know what we're going to get out of running backs in their first year. And case in point is Bijan Robinson, right? I mean, he was pretty miserable. And I mean, he was drafted in the first round in his rookie year. He was miserable for a first round pick. I mean, he was passable for a mid round pick, like a mid, like 5, 6, 7, 8th round pick, but not as a first round overall pick. I feel that that's the same thing here for Ashton Genty. I don't doubt the talent. I do doubt the supporting cast. I'm not exactly sure what he's got around him that's going to make him better. And I do kind of doubt that he's going to be able to acclimate immediately to the NFL. I mean, we've only seen him with 3 carries. He had like 2 yards. They didn't put him out there very long in the preseason. So I have no idea what he's going to do. I mean, he could be amazing and well worth it. And he maybe not. And if you think about who you're going to pick up in your first round, I want consistency and I want proven production. And I know I went against that a little bit by taking a little bit of a risk with Puka Nakua, but I feel like the proven production outweighed the consistency. And so that's what I kind of hung my head on. But you need some combination of those two things. I mean, you did the same thing. You got Jamar Chase. You got in your first round. I mean, obviously he is by far the most dynamic, the most
Yeah.
productive wide receiver. He's money in the bank, and that's what I want in my first round at least. So Ashton Genty was a question. Now Jaden Daniels was the one that I was going to call up though. I mean, he was the first quarterback off the board, and in the first round. Now that's interesting to me because right now, if you look at average draft position, Jaden Daniels is going 29th overall in PPR leagues, the third quarterback off the board. Right now, Lamar Jackson is going at 21, Josh Allen going at 23, Jaden Daniels at 29. That's my average draft position. So what do you think about Jaden Daniels going in the first round? Do you think too high? Or let's even make it a broader question. What do you think about Jaden Daniels being the first quarterback off the board overall?
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. That was one of my notes is that he's the only quarterback taken in the first 2 rounds, right? So we'll get
Right.
to round 2 here in a second. And I think this is a situation for me where, if you're in a league that you've been in for many years and you know who's in the league, you need to know what their tendencies are, right? So people tend to fall in love with a player. They might be a homer of a player.
Right.
And so, Jaden Daniels was a sneaky good quarterback last year. McLaurin's dealing with some injury stuff. Debo's there now. It's going to be interesting. Does he have a sophomore slump? So I mean, I wouldn't have taken him for sure. I mean, for me, he's behind. He's probably QB 4, 5, even 6
Oh,
for
wow.
me. I mean,
Okay.
it's Josh Allen, Lamar, Burrow, Jalen Hurts. I'm probably taking above him, but then he
Okay.
probably goes there, right? So what is that?
Yeah.
5?
Yeah. 5. Yeah.
But this is where it's important if you're drafting in a league you've been in, who has what tendency, what trends are there, and I certainly wouldn't have taken him there. I wouldn't have taken him first overall, but
He could make us look silly. I mean, he
if you
could
like
because
him, yeah,
he's got the skills
he's
and he's
got
got,
skills. Yeah, it's not a bad pick by any means. It's just I think it's a bit of a stretch for me.
yeah, I feel like it's too much of a risk for the first round. I guess
Yeah,
I think that yes, if he performs at where we think he can perform, he's definitely worth a first round pick. But anything less than that, and he's like a second round pick or a third round pick, right? Because if getting Josh Allen 2 rounds later is, I'm not saying Josh Allen is the better quarterback, although I do think he is,
right.
but the value there is better, right? I mean, you're just getting a better value. So you had a chance to take a stab at one of those top end wide receivers or running backs instead. All right, let's go to round 2 of the draft, which I think also interesting. We had at 11, Amon-Ra St. Brown, 12, Malik Neighbors, 13, Derrick Henry, 14, Brian Thomas, 15, Bucky Irving, 16, Kyron Williams, 17, Christian McCaffrey, 18, Devon Achane, 19, Brock Bowers, and 20, Trey McBride. So 2 tight ends going in the second round. And we see a huge running back run at this point. Only 3 wide receivers taken at the beginning and all running backs in between. What do you think here? What stands out to you in round 2?
Yeah, I think a couple things to me. One was no quarterbacks, right? So that was something we just talked about. I think, Christian McCaffrey, where's he at injury wise? Where's that team at injury wise? But I'll just talk about my pick, Brock Bowers, who was my pickup of the year last year,
Yeah.
going tight end at this point. So, this is understanding your league, understanding where you are in draft position, right? So I'm sitting here at 19, getting ready to get back-to-back picks on the turn and looking at what was in front of me. I knew there was going to be quarterbacks coming. And
Mm-hmm.
so the decision for me was, do I take a quarterback here or do I wait? And knowing that Allen, Jackson, Burrow, and
Right.
even Jalen Hurts were there, I
Yeah.
knew I had a quarterback.
Yeah. You're happy
And
with any of them.
so,
Right.
yeah, I had a pick. And so at this point, I'm sitting on Jamar Chase, and there just wasn't a running back. The next running backs, we started getting into the Jacobs, Hampton, Taylor, Brown, that, okay, great, whatever. So for me, it was an opportunity to get, what is an elite player at a position, which I
Right.
don't normally like to take tight ends early. But if you don't get Bowers or McBride, wait till like the 10th round.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so for me, it was knowing where I was, knowing what was left on the board, knowing, and just the tip, like third round, I went quarterback. So I knew I was going to get what I needed. And I wasn't quite sure Bowers was going to be there, and I wasn't going to reach on like a Josh Jacobs. So it's just kind of like, that's what stood out to me, in a little bit of strategy of like, where are you? Where are people around you? What's happening? And not to just go, oh, well, I need a running back here, so I'll just take,
whoever is available.
Go with it. And it's like,
right.
Okay, well, now I have the number one player at a position locked down for the rest of the year. So
and it's great because you actually have the number one wide receiver and the number one tight end, arguably could be number 1 or 2 quarterback, and that's in your first 3 rounds. I mean, I do think that there is something to be said, and this goes all the way back to the Antonio Gates days, where you're like, I can take him in the first or second round. I can distinguish myself at a position that's scarce. Tight end was scarce last year, really scarce last year. It's going to be scarce again this year. Clearly, had you not taken Brock Bowers, he would have been gone, because Joanne managed to take Trey McBride right after you. So Brock Bowers was probably well in the sights right there at a turn. So I think getting them at the end of the first round, end of the second round, is a pretty good value, because you can distinguish yourself at a position that's very scarce for fantasy football all across the board. Definitely in PPR. I mean, the guy gets so many targets. That I think it's it could be a league differentiator, having someone like Brock Bowers there. The couple questions I had for you here. So running backs, right? So Derrick Henry ends up going 13th overall, and then there's a huge run of running backs after him. It's a little bit of a morass to me, right? Because in PPR, I don't think Derrick Henry has any significant edge over other running backs who are more involved in the passing game. Now, he did have a miraculous year last year, and actually was involved at least a little bit in the passing game, as we talked about, because we had a bet.
I lost that one.
I think by mid-season you might have lost that one. So
like week 5.
So Derrick Henry, though, the secret's out, right? And he's at 13th. I mean, what do you think about that? Derrick Henry, as compared to the other running backs that went into the second round, Bucky Irving, Kyron Williams, Christian McCaffrey, and Devon Achane. I mean, is that the right move?
Yeah, I mean, again, this comes down to, here's a run, right? So in the first round, we had a few running backs go, and then you see Derrick Henry come off the board, and did people start to panic and go, oh, if I don't grab a running back here, I'm toast, or I need a second running back, and just start to get desperate? And it happens. I mean, these runs happen in the real NFL draft, and they absolutely happen in fantasy, and you got that clock ticking down. I mean, we're slow drafting this, but it kind of applies, right? You're sitting there, the clock's ticking, somebody grabs somebody you wanted. Now you're like, oh, do I reach and grab Bowers at 12, or what do I do? And so, yeah, look, I whiffed big time. I thought Henry was going to be toast, and he crushed me last year. Zero value in the passing game.
Right.
I think Bucky Irving, I like, McCaffrey, injury wise, like if he can play, he's, top 5 player in all of fantasy. Achane, some question marks, but I think it just shows, right? Like, after Jahmyr Gibbs, are we talking about guys with holes?
Yeah.
Like, who are you? I'll have to find a bet. I'm sure I'll make it, but like, who's going to be the guy that's going to bust out, or who's going to flop? Because none of these guys am I like, wow, I've got to have Josh Jacobs, or I've got to have,
right. It's basically Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley, Jahmyr Gibbs, and then other.
Right? And then it's super thin. And so the run happened, and people, I think, just started panicking and go, shit, if I don't get a running back here, I'm going to end up with, we're still drafting Alvin Kamara.
Right. And I did draft him. Because, you got to that point of the draft where I'm like, you know what?
He's going to
at least he's got the starting job.
They're going to run Wildcat. I think the Saints are just going to run Wildcat all season with Kamara. They're going to throw the ball like 4 times.
They clearly don't have a quarterback there, so basically,
So what are you going to do? But I think it's just a picture. I think it's a good example of like draft strategy. The clock's ticking.
Yeah.
You have a board in front of you, and what
Have a
you know.
plan. Have a
So
plan. You know,
if you're
that's the thing.
looking at if you don't take so at 17, if you don't take Christian McCaffrey, you're picking again. 8 picks later. Who's going to even be now? You're way down the list, right? Now
Right.
you're talking, big trouble.
Right.
So I just think it's an interesting view of like strategy and stuff. I think it's
Yeah.
good.
I like
I
to
think
make
it
sure
makes
that I
good
have a bunch of
question.
things that are like in kind of like, you know, groups, right? These three running backs I'm okay with. I don't want to get tied to a single player because that can derail your draft. But if you said something along the lines of, you know what, like you said, I'm okay with Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow. All four of those I'm happy with. So,
Yeah.
if I hit that, I want a quarterback here, one of those guys, bam, I'm good. But if you say, listen, I need to have Josh Allen and he's gone, you can panic and you can do something stupid. That could be a problem. That probably didn't exactly happen here, but I think what happened was that the running backs that people were targeting were gone, and they started thinking, uh-oh, in the second round, if I don't pick up a running back, I'm going to be left with chopped liver when I get to round 3. And everybody has this kind of feeling from past drafts that running back is a scarce position. It is. In PPR, there is definitely a differentiation, right? I think there's a huge differentiation in terms of running backs, and there's not a lot of those bell cow backs anymore. And I will say one more thing, not related to football at all, Scott. But you talked about time running out and panicking. I got the ultimate panicking story. I was at Comic-Con, and there's this giant claw machine where you had to go down and get like these big beach balls, right? And it's super easy, right? It's made up to be super easy so that everybody wins. Kids are in there going there winning, and you get these big prizes from Paramount. So I get there and I have a minute to go grab a beach ball, and I'm like being super exact about getting it down there. And then this thing starts beeping. I have 10 seconds left. Thing starts beeping. I absolutely panic and like slam on the button like the world is coming to an end, and it flips the ball up and I get nothing. I'm like the only person who got nothing out of that thing. So yes, that clock can make you do
Go get
stupid
you.
things. All right. That clock can make you do stupid things. And that definitely happens in fantasy football as well. All right. Well, that takes us to the end of the show. So let's go ahead and hit the air horn on the show. And all right. So Scott, give us your social media so people can follow you.
Yeah, check me out at NFL Fantasy _more. Still cranking out some NASCAR fantasy. So we cashed again last week. We got Richmond, and then
Yeah.
I'll give a plug. 2 weeks, Saturday night after week 0 is the Daytona night race, end of the regular season. So cap off your night of football. Check out the race. You won't be
Yeah.
disappointed.
Brilliant.
And got a big announcement coming the end of the month for everybody on my account. So that
Yeah.
still,
Everybody
still cooking that
follow.
one up.
And we're all kind of wondering. You keep sending out teasers about it, so we gotta figure out what it is. Actually, I do know what it is, but I'm not gonna tell anybody. You gotta follow him on Twitter X and figure it out for yourselves, guys. All right. Well, you can find me on X. Find me on Blue Sky. You can find me on whatever, any social media platform you want. As usual, thank you for listening and wasting time with us. We really hope you enjoyed the show, and we really hope you enjoy your fantasy football drafts that are coming up. We will be back next week. I think we're going to be doing this now back on our weekly schedule. So definitely don't forget to check us out as we get into the new season and give you all our thoughts on the football, on the preseason football, and as well as on fantasy football. And thank you again. We'll see you next time. Enjoy your NFL week.